the Knowledge Gap. I'm your host, Joe Ignace, and we're here with Nick Galbreath. Is that how you actually say your last name? I could read you that.
Yeah, Nick Galbreath.
Galbreath. He and I met through a mutual friend, actually talking about possibly podcasting because he has his own podcast at the University of Tennessee, Chattanooga, and started a real estate club down there and is a big real estate guy. And we just hit it off over the phone and had a fun couple conversations. Now we're hanging out because Nick is a pretty successful guy and a pretty faith-based man and got a lot of good stuff to talk about with purpose, so I'm excited to dive in and get to know you a little bit better on this call.
Absolutely. It's a pleasure being here, Joe.
Yeah.
Appreciate you having me.
Yeah, absolutely. So tell everybody what you do and give us a little bit of that. It's real estate, mumbo jumbo, commercial things. There's a very nice title that I'd never heard before talking to you. So
Yeah. So like you said, UTC Real Estate Club in college was the first thing that really stuck out to me. I was like, wow, I might want to pursue this for a career. I knew I didn't want to be really sitting at a office job I knew I didn't want to do. So I worked logistics freshman year in college that summer. And I loved the gym that I go work out at lunch. I loved the guys in there, but just really didn't see a future in that industry. And just the overall environment was just kind of more, I'd say, depleting me than kind of building me up. So that specific industry. And sophomore year, started getting into wholesaling real estate. And I recruited two of my fraternity brothers, and we started a LLC. Had no idea what we were doing, and started going out there trying to get properties under contract to assign to investors in Chattanooga. So that's kind of the kickoff. And then we met so many investors and professionals through that process of figuring things out. We did one wholesale deal, and then started the real estate club. And through that real estate club, we started meeting commercial real estate investors, agents, residential agents, investors, developers, appraisers, title companies, etc., and really got to see the whole perspective of like, wow, this industry is huge. And at that time we were still growing, still doing the wholesaling. In total we probably did 10 to 11 deals.
Nice.
Houses and lots through college, but really had a sole focus of, man, this commercial real estate thing is really what I want to get into, and just started getting drawn to specific sponsors in the industry who were buying apartments, trailer parks, or mobile home park communities.
Get it right, Nick. It's not a trailer park; it's a mobile home park.
Well, it's actually distinctive. So if you have a really nice mobile home park down in Florida, that's considered a mobile home community. That's what at Walker and Dunlop we'll finance through Fannie Mae and Freddie Mac. Like that's a really nice community that Fannie Mae and Freddie Mac will lend on. But when you get to like the older trailers and maybe a lot of crime going on, that might be considered a trailer park because they're trailers. They're literally in a park. They're not homes, like well-maintained homes. But then you have a few of that can be really brought back to life and changed into mobile home communities and be a really nice place.
Yeah, absolutely. We definitely need to understand more of that here in a second. But like you said that you're doing like the gym and fitness type stuff. So like, and then you said it was like depleting. Like, could you explain that? Like, why was that depleting to you? Like, walk us through that.
Yeah, and I didn't really clarify myself. So the gym was I found a lot of self-love for myself, self-love and a lot of growth in the gym at lunch when I was working at logistics. I didn't like the role I was in because I really didn't understand what I was doing to contribute to that company growing. So the role in accounting that I was doing for a job, it just kind of wore on me because I didn't see the entire vision. I would spend most of my time just like walking to the owner's offices and asking for advice, and being like, what book should I read? I'm rocking through a deal right now. What should I do on this deal? Or what are you looking for? How can I bring value to you? And when I started asking myself that question of how can I bring value to you, a lot of people were amazed by that and were like, well, I'm looking for some land in Florida. And then I started sending them parcels in Florida, or hunting land here in Georgia. And I started sending them hunting parcels in Georgia, and just really started having an itch, if I'm not going too off on a tangent here, of adding value to people that I wanted to mirror.
Wait, was this while you were an accountant, or were you what were you doing?
This was freshman year when I was working logistics as an accountant. Yeah.
Oh,
freshman year summer.
Funny, right? So this is your first internship.
First internship out of college.
Gotcha.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay, and so you were just like kind of in an office and just drearily, getting through the day and, looking at an Excel sheet most of the time, and then, You would just go and ask your boss
That's right, man.
stuff to get out of
That's
the cubicle kind of thing.
Yeah, and try to bring as much life into that office as I could,
Gotcha. Okay. So then,
try to spark up the place.
right? Okay, gotcha. So then you got out of that. You came back to school. You started this real estate club. You got really, really into it, and then you went into wholesale real estate. So like wholesale
Mhm.
real estate is because most people probably think of just like real estate agents.
Yeah, no, that's a great question, Joe. So wholesaling is when you have a purchase and sale contract. So just like take out the agent for a second. So you just have a buyer and a seller, okay? And a wholesaler is the one that connects the buyer and the seller. So the wholesaler will get the property under contract, so they'll get it under a purchase and sale agreement,
Okay.
and then have a clause in there that says they have the right to assign the equitable right in that property, and that equitable right is the purchase and sale contract to buy that property. Now you can assign that contract to another buyer. So let's say you get under contract for 50 grand and then you sign it to a buyer for 60 grand. Well, that difference is your profit as a wholesaler. So that 10 grand is the margin that you'll receive,
Gotcha.
etc. You just have to make sure it closes, right? Because you don't want to be that guy who gets a property under contract, says we're going to close, and then doesn't close the property, right? We've learned from our mistakes there, and just know how unethical that is in the industry. So if you're listening to this podcast and want to try it, go partner up with a mentor who knows what they're doing, so you don't get yourself in some legal trouble and
have you
really damage some families there.
have you gotten legal trouble?
Never legal trouble. We did a property where this nice lady wouldn't really come down on price, and we said we'd get under contract for 50 grand or something like that, and just really couldn't identify anybody who'd be willing to pay more than 50 grand. So we just ended up saying, hey, we can't do this deal, right? So it wasn't really high stake of situation. She was like, I really don't want to sell it, but like if I do want to sell, I'll sell for 50 grand. And we were just so hungry and desperate for deals, because we're like, man, we got to make this work. We don't have jobs. Like, what are we doing? So we ended up just getting out of that situation, and luckily it wasn't a bad situation.
Well, I like what you said about like finding a mentor. It's so important to find someone who can teach you things, especially early on, someone who invests in you. So who's your mentor, and how'd you find him, and what do they teach you so far?
Yeah, man, good question. I'd say I want to go down the most impactful mentors that have been in my life, and up until senior year, I had mentors throughout the real estate club, but really my senior year, into my senior year, really contemplating what I was going to do when I was leaving college. I got my real estate license and started working under a commercial agent named Joe.
That's a
And
great
he
name. Really nice name.
Yeah, it is a wonderful name. No, it's not Joe Ignace, everybody. It's not Joe. He's a little older than Joe. But he really started showing me that it's not about creating as much money as you can. It's not about creating financial wealth for yourself. It's more about what your purpose in life is. And at the end of the day, it is God's money, right? And if you make as much money as you can, but you killed relationships and really were cold-hearted and had like a stone heart, like Ezekiel 36:26, whatever. I think it's 36:26 or 26:36 that said, soften your heart. And if you don't soften your heart, dude, you're going to have a very empty heart, empty soul at the end of the day, when you're sitting on a lot of money, but nobody to share with, or not enough self-love to just fill you, while we're here in life. A beauty perspective that I've been able to gain from Joe is like, hey man, take a step back. He's like, Nick, I've always been very impressed with you because you're seeking significance over making a lot of money. He's like, you're seeking significance over than just creating wealth right now, right? And like significance, purpose, and why we're here, when we're here. Let's love. Let's be leaders to each other and mentor others that we've gone through to help each other, build each other up as we're here in life, because we can literally change people's lives with the knowledge that we've been through and the circumstances that we've been in. How we learn from that circumstance. Why not tell somebody else, right? Why not shorten the learning curve and shorten the hurt and pain that somebody else goes through? So that's really been what I love about meeting new people, is just being like, what they've learned and what they've experienced, I can learn from that. And then I can give also. And like when we start giving and loving and just appreciating others around us, dude, it just fills me up. And that Joe really showed me that. He's like, Nick, there's more to life. I make 600 grand, 700 grand a year, but that's not the thing. I'd rather you be saved. And I was saved. And when he brought me to church, he took me to a men's group, and I just saw all these men just having a tender heart for God. And I was like, dude, this is something that I need to be around right here. Leaders in Chattanooga, all just surrendering and just praying and just tearing up, right?
Walk us through a little bit more of your search for significance. I like that. I think every young guy goes through this search for significance. I feel like in a similar way, and like walk us through that.
Oh, what a good question. I would say it was just trying to understand my perspective in life. If I can draw a picture there, is like my perspective, when I was in college was smoking weed, trying to put my mind on different things. There was a lot of working out, having a lot of intimate sexual action with my girlfriend, and just being lost. I mean, just lost in my mind and being dragged down by thoughts and feelings that were steering me in life. And what was my search for significance is what I'm still sharpening till today. Literally 2 points that I wrote down to talk about in this conversation were constantly engaging in reflection, right? When like Joe started introducing, say, Nick, reflect. And he didn't literally say this, but he's just like, look at this perspective and then look at yours, right? And I really connected with him because he had a similar story. He dealt with sexual addiction, drug addiction, and just running around and just trying to collect all the material things he could, right? When he was younger. And I was like, wow, that's my story at the moment. If I still head in that same direction, I know where it's going to lead me. And Joe was like, Nick, look at this other perspective, right? Reflect on where you are, be open-minded, seek people like me, that have that strong foundation in faith, and also steer away. Be careful when you're going through life and people aren't on a foundation, aren't on God's foundation, and don't have the Holy Spirit in them, but still love and appreciate and share that with them. And before I get off track on the significance, is reinforce that you're never separated from God. I mean, I literally learned this last night, and to be honest with you, I never really understood the good news of the gospel. I just read through the gospel. I was like, okay, this is what we're supposed to share. We're supposed to share stories. Well, really, I think you're supposed to share what I learned last night is just God's always with you, no matter what you're doing. Maybe you're listening to this podcast right now and you're smoking weed or whatever. God's still with you. You're not separated from God. I was letting my feelings and life direct me, right? Whatever I was feeling, I would just kind of go off that feeling, be like, okay, I think this is the right thing to do. But now that I'm realizing is align my feelings with God's word, and searching for significance abides in that, right? It's just like, as we're going through life, just seek like people that you want to mirror, people that mentor is just such this acceleration of significance, understanding significance, understanding the wisdom that will just soften your heart. And I hope I laid that out really nicely, Joe, of searching for significance in my personal story. So
Yeah, absolutely. It's just an important thing. A couple points, that you mentioned is just like, man, the significance is it's a search everybody goes for, and you're always looking for it. And especially when you're young and you don't have like a track record of quote unquote success other than maybe high school sports or whatever you did in college, it's really easy to fly by the seat of your pants, and just follow the emotions, follow what feels good, and
yeah.
I think part of being a successful leader, is learning when to have discipline, when to make choices that don't feel good but are best for you long term. I saw a poster sometime. It was like self-discipline is saying no to what you want now to say yes to what you want most, is basically what discipline is,
Yeah. And that can be as little as, not buying dinner, right? And being like, oh, I'm meal prepping.
Yeah, being
Right.
healthier.
I want to make good health decisions. So I'm going to meal prep. And when my buddies go out to dinner, I was literally with a buddy last night. I just brought my food. I brought my lunch and dinner to work and ate it, and then went and ate dinner with them. And I was just present with them. I didn't eat dinner,
Yeah.
but what I want is to be more health conscious, and also what I want is not to spend unnecessary money on dinner. Right, that's $20. Right, I'm just like, why do I have food? Why do I need to buy food? You know,
Absolutely.
I have 40 pounds of chicken in my freezer. I need to eat it.
Nice.
Um,
40 pounds of chicken. That's a
dude,
lot.
Costco business.
That-
That's the tip
That's how
for
you
this
do
whole
it right there, right?
podcast.
Yeah. Well, I also like what you said about reflection. I did an episode around the new year that was on being more intentional in your life, and
Yeah.
one of the habits that I think every person needs to start putting into their schedule. I really just think every person is, on like Sunday mornings, if you go to church before church or in the afternoon, whatever time makes sense for you, for your brain. But you just sit there and you look back over your week and you just figure out what did you do well and what did you want to change about last week. People
Hmm.
do that on the yearly, kind of calendar. The New Year's resolution comes up, everyone starts doing it. And it's really important to develop in your life where you don't need other people, like this skill of not needing other people in order to do things that are healthy and good. Like if you think about New Year's resolutions, the reason people do them, they've known about this problem for 12 months, right? They've known about it the entire year, but they've not done it. Why? Because they didn't feel motivated or whatever, or it's not the right time, or they didn't make a commitment. But now everyone's doing it, and now you do it. And that's just a poor habit that is ingrained in our brain because as human beings, we like to be a part of the herd. We like to fit in. And what you want to learn how to do is to not fit in. Like what you just said about going to eat and you meal prepped and then you just sat there and hung out and you didn't buy food is a very, kind of anti-cultural thing, which I think is really, really important, because most people, right, they're going to do that New Year's resolution. They're going to go and try it for a month and then they're going to have too many New Year's resolutions and they're going to fail and they're not going to touch it for 11 more months and they're not going to get any better. And in fact, they're going to develop in themselves a mentality of failure that I can never do it. But if you just sit there every single week, for example, and you say, what went well this week? What could I focus on next week? And you just did it every week and you just reflecting and making these little changes throughout the year, you're going to make a bigger difference in your life than every New Year's resolution that you'll ever make. And this is so important too, to not care what other people are doing and do the opposite. Because again, most people maybe sleep in or they avoid this. They don't journal. They don't write down their schedule. So there was a study, done on, it's like the authority study where they, brought people into this room. I was just talking to a friend at the gym about this, but they bring people into this room. There's a test subject who doesn't actually get shocked. It's the shock, therapy test, right? They're seeing what percentage of people will press this button because they're told to, right? So everyone's in on it. No one gets injured. It's just a psychology experiment. But the person pressing the button doesn't know that it's a psychology experiment. And the person in the booth, he does look like he's getting shocked because he's a paid actor. And so he's flipping out every time he gets shocked. The doctor telling the patient or the person who doesn't know it's an experiment, he's telling them to press the button and turn the voltage up. And he'll tell them to push it all the way up to where it's lethal and it would kill the person. And they found like 80%, don't quote me, we could look this up right now if we wanted to, but it's like 80% of people would because they're told to, they would press the button and shock the person at lethal levels and kill them in the experiment. 80%.
Wow.
Because they're just told to. And, if you want to master your purpose, if you want to be successful, if you want to go help people, you've got to learn to start thinking in the 20% of people who question why they're doing what they're doing, which I think is what your mentor, Joe, has done for you. He says like, hey man, like you're doing what everybody else is doing. Try something different because you want to be in that 20%, not to just be better than people. You want to be in that 20% because you want to question things and you want to ask, is that really what I want? Do I really want to press this button and lethally kill this person just because this person told me to? Because I think that's a really great metaphor for life. I think it's like 88% of people don't like their job. I don't actually think that the reason that number is pretty close to the 80% of people who just listen to authority. I think those numbers are similar in value just because people are listening to what other people want them to do all the time and it makes them miserable. How would you feel, right, at the end of that experiment if you were one of those 80% of people who pushed that button and killed somebody? Like, I wonder what your thoughts would be, right? It's like regret, angry at yourself for doing the thing that you really didn't want to do. And how many people do that in college or in their young adult life when the pressure is to go out, party, get drunk, all that kind of stuff. And not saying I didn't do that in college, had my times of doing that. So there's
Yes. Same
no
here.
judgment at all, but once you realize, you sit down, you think it's like, why am I doing this? You want to get in that 20% who fights back on that kind of stuff, who's not just gonna, because that's really what makes you happy, is figuring out what you like and not just doing what everybody else likes. Because as it turned out, when I went to those, I was like the guy to go sit in the corner and like people watch and talk to people. What I really enjoyed was having really in-depth emotional conversations with people. And,
Yeah.
I would have those with people just because their guard was down, I guess, and maybe mine was too. So when we'd sit on the
You made him
side,
feel comfortable.
yeah,
You made him feel comfortable, and you have the power of being vulnerable with others, which vulnerability creates vulnerability,
yeah,
right? And I love where you're going with this, Joe, because recently what have I understood is like we all just have patterns that we like to do. It's not us; it's just the patterns that we create in what we're doing. So if it's going out to bars, it's just a pattern that we're creating. So being curious and reflecting and putting you in that state, your mind is going to figure out, be like, why am I going to the bars? When you actually just sit down and reflect, you say, yeah, a good time could be on Sunday, but maybe 5 minutes in the morning, be just starting building that muscle of being reflecting, be like, okay, let's look at my life, who I want to become and where I'm at now. Is that gap getting closer, or is it just continue to get wider and wider, right? And what patterns do I need to break, and what patterns do I need to create to continue journey being the person that I want to become?
yeah, absolutely. And I think that's important because you obviously sounds like you love what you're doing, where you're like, okay, wholesale real estate, it's fun. It's entrepreneurial, you're kind of in charge of your income. You're in charge of a lot of the things that you want to be in charge of, and obviously you went and had some experiences of being an accountant and realized that is awful, at least for you,
But it was also a blessing too, because I would have never talked to those business owners. I would have
Right.
never read who moved my cheese.
Who moved my cheese?
Who moved my cheese?
What is that book
Spencer,
about?
dude, it's a good book. It just says follow the money. Right? Don't get stuck in the pattern of being comfortable, and be okay breaking that pattern.
Almost be smarter with your time.
Yeah, smarter with your time, and just reflect. It's what we're talking about right now. Be curious, reflect, seek, and you'll shall find, right? Seek people that are creating wealth and living lives that you want to mirror, and also question and be curious on their life. Don't just follow. And I have that habit too of just following. But when you start questioning, reflecting, like we're talking about, it is so impactful to you, and you just start loving yourself even more, right? And that's a problem I've always had too, is not loving myself and just feeling that self-love, right? Because you can't be valuable to anybody else if you don't love yourself first. And that starts by asking yourself really good questions, being curious and reflecting.
Absolutely. And this is all about, self-awareness too. It's just like, you have to understand what you're good, bad, and the ugly about yourself, and really face
Yeah.
the cactus, as you're saying, which I like. Okay. So I know you were telling me the other day that you both just bought a commercial building with a bunch of storefronts, and they're bringing in a Tesla thing. Is that right?
Dude, that we bought a shopping center in
Shopping
Commerce,
center,
Georgia.
Commerce,
Yeah.
Georgia. Awesome.
So it's 163,000 shopping center in Commerce, Georgia, and it all started. This relationship started with David and I when I was in school, and I was curious about commercial real estate ownership. He was buying shopping centers, and he told me, he was like, Nick, the same time it takes me to manage 2 duplexes, it takes me to manage 150,000 square foot shopping center. And I was like, well, I think I know the direction I'm headed. I was like, I want to start understanding this industry and understanding the mindset that is okay with spending or investing $9.5 million and $3.5 million of somebody else's money into a venture. How is the due diligence conducted? What makes the decision a go or a no go? How is this process all flowing through? So what I started doing was I started searching. I was curious. I was like, okay, I need to find these opportunities. Started networking with brokers and started reaching out to direct owners. And it's been about a 2.5-year journey of me doing that, close to 2 years at least. And this opportunity, seek, you shall find, right? So it's just the rewards, right? It took a while, and I don't know why I didn't stop, but I just built that. I built that habit to be like, I'm not going to stop. Right.
Don't quit,
And
right?
dude, don't quit. Don't quit. Because when you're about to quit, right, so are other people. And if you quit, that other person is going to get that opportunity. You're not. You could have just held on a little bit longer.
Oh
Right.
yeah.
So believe in the process. Just continue to hammer down. Continue to eat your meal prep meals and not go out to eat. I mean, I'm not saying not give yourself a little grace and maybe go out once a week, right, and eat something.
It's just more of
But
that
just continue.
mentality.
Yeah, dude, just continue to hammer and hammer away, and you'll find great joy in that. You're like, man, I have just been so consistent in this pattern. We are consistent human beings. It's just what we focus and we want to create a pattern in, right? We don't need to be more consistent. We're consistent. It's just where we're spending our time and what patterns we're creating. And that's why I spent a lot of time. And dude, it's reaped a lot of rewards, and we're excited to impact the community and commerce and really take the center to the next level. I was talking with the city yesterday, and we'll put a little event on and get the city involved. And dude, it's just so cool to be an owner in a community like that. So
Yeah, that's pretty awesome.
it's a blessing.
So from 2.5 years of no success to a boom, $9.5 million property. That's how you do it, everybody. The secret to success right here on the Knowledge Gap. So let me ask you this. This is a question that I always think about, and I think my audience thinks about all the time.
Yeah.
And this is important. Did college actually prepare you for any of this stuff? Is the reason that you're successful more about the mentorship or what you learned in college? Or, expand on that.
What I valued in college was the relationships I created and the ability to open my mind to suggestions, opinions, and thoughts. So a lot of the value came from creating the real estate club and having mentors and other professionals come in, but it also opened me up to talking to all of the faculty members at the business college. What they thought, like, what did the professionals think, like, where did I want to kind of head, and creating this community allowed me to be like, okay, I don't like that. I like that, how that person thinks about money and wealth, and working on something that when they're done with it, it continues to work for them. I like that. Do I like just doing time for your work? No, I really don't like that, because I don't want to live my life like that. I do. Yes, I'll put in time, the effort, everything. So those continue. And I want something that just will grow while I get older and while my family, when I start to have a family, so they can benefit off that.
Yeah.
So it really opened up the value. What you get to the points, the perspective of other thought processes and crafting my own.
Yeah.
Right. In college, and having a lot of exposure to others.
Networking
was awesome.
Networking is the biggest thing. So this is really important. We really try to push this a lot for people, because you got to understand that the value of college is going to be way less about your major specifically and much more about the connections that you make.
Absolutely.
Unless you're, the only thing where you really have to be major specific is this really high tech, STEM fields, medical engineering. Like, you do have to get those in order to be okay in those types of fields. But like, really, if you want to be successful, figure things out. There's a network of people who do things smarter. They create things that make money for you. They spend their time in a way that is more conducive to their lifestyle. And I think there's the people who just kind of fit in. And I'm telling you, the people who just fit in, like, I met this guy selling books door to door, and his name, I won't say his name, but he was a doctor in a small town in like Oklahoma, and he had a little clinic, for example. And I found this very interesting. He was a really business savvy doctor, which is very rare. That's not like a normal thing from my experience. Like, literally, I went to a doctor like 2 days ago, and I waited for 2 hours. I got in there for 5 minutes, and he said, I thought I was scheduled for this, procedure I needed to have, something to do with my stomach. And he's like, no, I always got to like check on people, make sure they're not on blood thinners. But they mailed me all this stuff to get my medical history. So they already had my medical history, and it would say that I'm not on blood thinners. And so I waited 2 hours. I got in there for 5 minutes, and then he finally scheduled the appointment I needed. Right. And he did it because he wanted the extra appointment boost for like pay from the insurance. Like, that's definitely why he did it. And that's a terrible business move, because I never want to see this man again. It was so frustrating,
Yeah.
And I'm 25. I'm not on blood thinners. You can look at my age and date of birth and know I'm not on blood thinners. So it was just like it was such a devious thing. It was just like, come on, like, you've got to be kidding me. You know, I'm smart enough to understand that, like, that doesn't make any sense, right? But this guy, you know, who I'd met, he had a little clinic, and he said, you know what? I don't need insurance from anybody. I'll just charge you $100 a month, and you just get 24/7 care. Anything you need, just let me know. Come in. It's $100 a month. And he did this in this small town. And what he did is he had a niche community. So just like this entire town basically went to him for service, for medical service at this point. He was just, you know, a primary care doctor, right? He was a primary care doctor, which is impressive.
Yeah.
So, and he had like, you know, 5,000 people at this town sign up or whatever. So he's bringing in, you know, $50,000 or $60,000 a month, right? No insurance. People could just walk in. And what he found was, of those 5,000 people, only like 8 to 10 people are ever sick at one time. He wouldn't work that much in the office every week. He'd have 8 to 10 people a week come up for appointments, and he was incentivized to solve their problem as fast as humanly possible because they're paying him this flat rate. And if he solves their problem and they don't come back in, that's good for him.
Yeah.
And what I realized in that moment, like, he was thinking so differently than like the industry from yesterday. Because, you know, I'm just getting on this idea of like, there's a smart way to do things, and networking and meeting these people and figuring out like what you're talking about, buying shopping centers is a smarter way to invest in real estate than like buying 25 duplexes, for example, right? Because you just make much more for that one thing that you manage instead of trying to manage 25, which can be overwhelming. He was incentivized to solve people's problems. He solved their problems. People kept coming back, and he made $600,000 a year working half the hours of someone at a hospital who made less money. And there's just a smarter way to do it. And it didn't do this nonsense where you'd come in, wait 2 hours, have a meeting, have another thing to try to get the most money out of the insurance, which is a selfish way to run a business. Right. And I just, man, that is just so much smarter and so much better. You know, and in my experience, there's just so many different businesses out there that are just like really about the money and not about the people. And I just, man, that was just a great way to set it up. You know, it's such a great way to set it up, and it's so much smarter. And that's like a purpose-driven business. You know, you're here, you're going to change up. It's going to be really different. You know, he's definitely part of that 20%, right? He's not going to like just let people tell him what to do. Right. And so it's like, how do you even build that mentality of being part of that 20% who goes the opposite direction from everyone, you know? And I think it just comes down to your purpose, your values, your belief, and your character, right? And those are the 4 things you've got to figure out as quick as possible, right? And I think one of the reasons that you're successful and have a $9.5 million shopping center now at the age of, how old are you?
23.
23, baby. You're younger than me.
Yeah, man.
That's awesome. Yeah, age of 23, right? Is because you met a mentor who knew all 4 of those, he had answers to all 4 of those questions and posed those questions to you in a way that you could figure those out early in life. And if you want to be successful, again, it's not going to be your classwork. You know, you can Google all that stuff. Hate to say it, but you can, right? You can Google everything you're taught in school, which is so bizarre. Isn't that just a bizarre thought? Like,
wow.
Yeah, how much money you spend on it, you know, to get this.
But it makes things easy, right? And that is just a really bad, pattern to continue to do. Is it makes things easy. You're like, I'll just Quizlet, all this stuff.
Yeah. I'm not saying that's like, you definitely shouldn't cheat. That's like, you're cheating yourself. If you're paying for college, I think you should get the absolute most out of it and learn as much as you possibly can. But my point being, is just going to college isn't enough to go be successful and do big things. And in fact, it has a lot more to do with the people that you go meet. And if there's anything you take from this conversation, one thing that seems to really shine through is you need to go find a mentor who's really good at what they do, that is doing something that you're interested in, and it will help you. The community, network, relationships, like that right there is what's going to help you in the real world. Don't flunk out of college. We both graduated college, right? So, you know,
That's right.
Graduate, you know, get your degree, do all that stuff, and do it as economically as possible. But, you know, I wouldn't be in the place I was at today if I didn't network and I didn't meet and do these internships. You know, but I know that the classes aren't the reason that I'm doing what I'm doing, you know? So the whole point is that don't get bogged down in being comfortable in your normal habits, because, you know, the problems that young people face nowadays, just being stuck in social media all the time, you know, and just doing things that feel good. And some of these things that we're talking about, like, doesn't feel good. Reflecting on who you are and looking at the hard parts of your life and things you don't like about yourself is really difficult. It's not enjoyable at all the first time you do it. It usually is really, you kind of get discouraged because you realize for the first time how negative you are. or how many mistakes you've made. And I think Jesus is definitely like the answer to like that kind of stuff. Like that's like faith, man, that's like going to help you get through it all. I couldn't imagine trying to get through all that without knowing my identity in Christ. You know what I'm saying? So I encourage that, to just check out, like, I don't know, a really good book that I read by C.S. Lewis called A Pilgrim's Regress. If you're a very analytical person, a very philosophical type book. If you're somebody who's like, why do I need that or something, I would check that book out. So
something that's really on my heart is, where do you want to accelerate? Where do you want to accelerate the learning curve? And finding a mentor that's in the industry that you want to go, accelerating in your spiritual journey, reading books from C.S. Lewis, getting perspectives that are going to accelerate your learning curve than you just figuring them out yourself. And when you ask it like that, do I want to accelerate in life and accelerate that learning curve so I can make the best decisions right now? When you start looking at it from that perspective, it's like, yeah, I'll read a book. Yeah, I'll go to this networking meeting. Yeah, because these are going to make me have a more fulfilled and intentional life long term, right? And that habit just continues to build, and get yourself around people that do the exact same thing. So that has been such a blessing in my life. That was that I learned in college. So just wanted to share it with everyone on here. Is ask yourself that question. Do I want to accelerate the learning curve and live a more fulfilled life? Why not? Why would you not want to live a more fulfilled life? And that's a hard question to say no to. So
yeah, it's all about taking that first step.
absolutely,
Which we encourage you to do. If you have questions about that, comment below for sure. And, join the Discord and feel free to ask us any questions. We'll get Nick on there too. We are building a community of people who want to live purpose-driven lives. And that's going to be a place where you can chat and talk with different people on there. So we definitely want you to join that. And of course, if you haven't already, like, subscribe to the podcast, you crazy people. This is like really cool stuff. We've got awesome interviews with people like Nick and awesome, reflections on, different parts of life to help you master your purpose in life. Because if you can master your purpose when you're 18, 19, 20, 21, 25 years old, anywhere in that range of in your 20s and being on the younger side, the world will get out of your way if you know what you want. It will get out of your way. If you can get in that 20% who doesn't really care what everyone else is doing, is trying to figure out what you care about and trying to go after this mission, you will be extremely successful. And what is success? That's more of a personal definition. So it's not always about the money. It's about how you use the money. It's about how you help people. It's about how you impact people and what kind of legacy you leave. So if you're that kind of person who enjoys learning about that kind of stuff, seriously, you should subscribe to this. You're the kind of people I want to meet, that we want to talk to, and appreciate you for listening to this episode. And we'll see you next time. So here we go. Thanks,
Joe. It's a pleasure.
All right. Thanks, Nick.